Picture a classroom in Budapest in the 1970s. No giant product launch, no television cameras, no crowd counting down to a reveal. Just a teacher trying to explain shape, movement, and space to his students. Out of that quiet problem came one of the most recognized objects on Earth. That teacher was Erno Rubik. Today, almost everyone knows the cube that carries his name. Even people who have never solved one know exactly what it looks like. Bright colors, black grid, a shape so simple it almost seems inevitable. But the strange part is this. The Rubik's Cube was not created as a toy first. It began as a teaching tool, an object meant to help students understand how pieces could move in relation to one another in three-dimensional space. That is what makes Rubik such a great subject. He did not set out to become a celebrity inventor. He did not chase fame by building something flashy. He was a designer, a thinker, and a teacher. And the thing that made him famous was born from curiosity more than ambition. Erno Rubik was born in Budapest in 1944. He came from a family that seems almost perfectly built to produce an inventor with an artistic eye. His father was an engineer known for glider design. His mother was a writer and artist. That mix matters. Rubik grew up around precision and imagination at the same time. He later studied sculpture and architecture, two disciplines that demand both structure and vision. Before the cube ever existed, his mind was already living in that space between art and engineering. He earned a degree in architecture in 1967, and in time, he became a professor connected to design and architecture in Budapest. He liked geometric models. He liked form. He liked the relationship between an object and the rules that hold it together. Those interests may sound academic, but in Rubik's hands they became something physical, something you could hold. Then came the problem. How do you create an object made of smaller moving parts that can turn and shift without falling apart? That sounds simple when you already know the answer. It was not simple then. In 1974, Rubik built a prototype cube out of wood. He used very basic materials and hand construction methods. This was not a sleek corporate lab invention. It was a practical experiment. He wanted a model his students could use to understand movement in space. The miracle was not just that he built it. The miracle was that the thing actually worked. Then came the second surprise. Once the cube could move, it became a puzzle. Rubik had not merely created a model of motion. He had created a system of disorder and order. Twist it once, and the neat logic of the object vanished. Twist it again, and the problem deepened. The cube did not just demonstrate space. It challenged the mind trying to control that space. And in one of the most telling details of the whole story, Rubik himself had to wrestle with the thing he had made. According to Britannica, it took him about a month to solve the problem of restoring the cube after scrambling it. That detail is perfect because it tells you this was not a gimmick. The inventor did not create a fake challenge for everyone else. He created something that humbled even him. At first, the cube was called the Magic Cube. In Hungarian, Buvas Kaka. It began circulating in Hungary in the late 1970s. A small company helped bring colorful plastic versions to market. But communist-era Hungary was not the easiest place to turn a clever object into a global product. Exports were tightly controlled. Even a brilliant invention could remain trapped by the limits of its political and economic environment. This is where the story becomes larger than invention. It becomes a story about timing, translation, and luck. The Magic Cube appeared at international toy fairs in 1979. There, the puzzle found the kind of advocates it needed. One of the key figures was Tom Kremer, an entrepreneur who saw what others might have missed. He recognized that the cube was not just a local curiosity. It had the power to travel. A deal was reached with the Ideal Toy Company, and in 1980 the Magic Cube received the name the world would remember forever, Rubik's Cube. Once that happened, the rise was explosive. And by the early 1980s, the cube was everywhere. It was in schools, living rooms, department stores, magazines, and television segments. It was the kind of object people carried around not just to play with, but to prove something. Patience, intelligence, discipline, style. The cube became more than a puzzle. It became a social signal. Britannica notes that more than 100 million authorized units were sold worldwide, along with tens of millions of imitations, mostly during the first great wave of popularity. Later estimates put total sales at around 350 million. That is a staggering number for an object that does only one thing. It scrambles. And then it waits for you to prove that you can understand it. Part of the magic was visual. The cube was instantly recognizable. Part of it was tactile. You could feel the clicks. You could hear the mechanism working under your fingers. But the deepest part of its power was psychological. A Rubik's Cube gives you a promise and a threat at the same time. The promise is that there is a solution. The threat is that the solution will not reveal itself just because you want it to. That may be why the cube survived when so many other 1980s fads faded. Plenty of toys are exciting for a week and then dead forever. The cube keeps pulling people back because it is not only fun, it is personal. It confronts you with your own attention span, your own frustration, your own willingness to learn patterns instead of forcing random motion and hoping for a miracle. Smithsonian described the cube as something that speaks to human universals while remaining almost without language. That feels exactly right. You do not need the same culture, the same politics, or the same first language to understand what the cube is asking of you. Mix me up, then find your way back. And that brings us back to Rubik himself. He is not remembered because he made a loud invention. He is remembered because he made a quiet one that lasted. The cube is not powered by batteries. It does not need a screen. It has no voice, no soundtrack, no updates, no subscription, no hidden feature waiting behind a future release. It is just structure, motion, color, and consequence. In a world full of disposable distractions, that kind of elegance feels almost radical. There is also something beautiful about the fact that the cube emerged from teaching. Rubik was not trying to make people passive. He was trying to make them see. Really see. How parts relate to wholes. How motion changes structure. How complexity can come from simple rules. Those are design lessons, but they are also life lessons. One twist can look harmless. A few more twists and the whole thing becomes chaos. But chaos is not the end of the story. It is only the stage where understanding becomes necessary. That is why the cube has never belonged only to children. It belongs to mathematicians, artists, collectors, engineers, speed solvers, teachers, and people who simply like the feeling of holding a difficult thing in their hands. The cube crosses categories because Rubik himself crossed categories. He was not only an inventor, he was an artist-minded builder. Not only a teacher, but a designer. Not only a designer, but a thinker of systems. Even the numbers attached to the cube carry their own mythology. Britannica describes the classic cube as having 43 quintillion possible configurations. That number is so huge it almost stops feeling real. Yet every one of those scrambled states can be brought back into order. That idea alone is enough to keep the object alive in the imagination. It takes disorder and gives it boundaries. It turns confusion into a solvable condition. There is another reason Rubik's story endures. It cuts against the fantasy that innovation always looks dramatic in the moment. Sometimes it does not. Sometimes the future arrives as a professor in a workshop using wood, rubber bands, and patience. Sometimes the object that will circle the planet starts as a private attempt to explain one difficult idea more clearly. And sometimes the invention that defines a person is not a machine that goes faster or farther, but a puzzle that asks people to slow down and think. That may be the real legacy of Erno Rubik. He gave the world an object that rewards focus. He created something that made millions of people willingly struggle. He proved that difficulty itself can be compelling when it is shaped with elegance. And he left behind a symbol that still works nearly half a century after its creation. Not because it became a trend, but because it escaped trend altogether. The cube entered culture, education, mathematics, art, and memory. It became one of those rare things that feels both specific to its time and somehow outside of time. A lot of inventions promise convenience. Rubik's most famous invention promised something different. A challenge, a structure, a mystery with rules. That may be why it still matters. Because deep down, people do not only want things that entertain them, they want things that test them. And Erno Rubik built one of the most famous tests in modern history,